So the S12 is a pretty damn good car for its time. It looked pretty good, it was good on performance, and it even won some WRC championships. But for some reason, this car has been forgotten just like the Pulsar NX, and the only time this car gets brought up is when an S12 owner comes out yelling, saying that this car is better than the 86, it's in a different class, which to that argument it is true. It weighed more, it had a V6 instead of an inline 4, it had more technology, and for the most part had an independent rear suspension. And the other reason this car gets brought up is when someone finally figures out about this car and then is like, wow, this car looks like an 86, it's rear wheel drive, it has a pretty good engine in it. Why is nobody talking about it? So here I am, talking about the S12. And in this video, we're going to be going over the years, the trims that the S12 had, common problems, which is a hard thing to find on the internet, and I can't believe nobody has really talked about this in depth. Rare parts that add value to the S12 you're looking at. And last but not least, the 5 rarest colors you could get for an S12 back in the day. I think one thing that's really cool about these cars is that they're rare but also not expensive. A lot of cars that are rare, you know, they're going for like 20 grand, but this car is rare but also cheap, and I think that's so awesome. And this is probably one of the best bargains that you can get if you want to get in that 80s classic car lifestyle and don't got a lot of cash. So the Nissan S12 was in production from 1983 to 1988, and a couple of things changed over the years. So if you want to take owning an 80s car to the next level and you want that solid rear axle vibe, then you will be looking at max for an 84 S12. Some people say you could get it on an 85 in Canada, but for the most part it's 84. And one thing that you got with the solid rear axle was drum brakes. You could only get this on the base engine, and if you got any other engine type like the turbo, you would be getting the independent rear suspension, and then in 85 independent rear suspension became standard. These early models were called Mark 1s, and in 1986 the Mark II came out. They did numerous exterior upgrades and just made the car look a little bit different, you know, to get more people to buy the car. Now to go through each difference for each trim would take upwards of 20 minutes. So on your own time, look up a 1984 S12 and then look up a 1988 S12 and see which styling you like better. The taillights change, the bumpers change, the side moldings change. Literally everything changed a tad bit. Unfortunately, in 1987, Nissan gave us some bad news and they dropped the turbo engine, and its replacement was a VG30E V6 from the 200SX. Now this is a 6-cylinder, which I guess is good, and Americans at that time liked it better because it had more torque, but I know most of you guys want the turbo. And then the last change throughout the years was in 1988 when the VG30E got a 5 horsepower boost. So for trims, there was a lot of different engines you could get in this car depending on where you're at in the world, but more likely than not, if you want a sportier car, you're gonna have to go with the hatchbacks. Not just because it looks nicer to most people, but because all of the sporty equipment and better engines came in the hatchbacks, while the coupes were most likely base models. The engine that came in the coupes was called the CA20E, and this engine was a naturally aspirated single overhead cam 2-liter engine that made a whopping 102 horsepower and 116 pound-feet of torque. But if you got the hatch, you could get the CA18ET, which was a single overhead cam 1.8-liter turbo engine that made 120 horsepower and 134 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you're not too fond of turbos, I guess Nissan wasn't either, and they swapped it out, like I said earlier, for the V6. This VG30E made 165 horsepower and 174 pound-feet of torque. Now, if buying a cool, unwanted Japanese sports car from the 80s isn't cool enough, and you want to be super cool with one of those imported cars, there's a couple more engines that you can choose from that are even better. There's a CA18DET, which was a dual overhead cam version of the CA18ET, that made 169 horsepower and 168 pound-feet of torque. And then there was also the FJ20E. This made 148 horsepower and 136 pound-feet of torque. And last but not least, there was FJ20ET, the turbo version of the FJ20E, with 190 horsepower. So now let's hop into the common problems that you'll find on the S12. So first, we'll start off with the biggest problem that the S12 has, and that's that it's in the shadow of the 240SX. So anybody that's ever looking for Sylvia automatically goes for the S13, S14, or S15, and the S12 gets left in the dust. That means very few performance parts, very few replacement parts, even for stock things, and so you're left with either buying used parts or parts that other S12 owners have made to fix this problem on their own car. And there is a fix to this, but it is expensive. Before, what S12 enthusiasts like to do, they swapped a bunch of S13 parts into their S12. But unfortunately, because S13s are getting so expensive, it's getting harder and harder to do that. You can still do that if you want, and it makes it a lot easier finding parts, but it does cost a pretty penny. Of course, another issue that these cars have is rust. The main spots you want to look for on these is at the bottom of the doors and in the wheel wells. If you see it there, you might want to pass. And the last very common issue that these cars have is their just wiring harnesses go bad. Good news is you can find someone to make a brand new one. Bad news is it costs a lot of money. But out of all the people I've talked to, that is a problem that everybody seems to have. And if you get it fixed, your car should be reliable as hell. It might be slow if you have the CA20, but it will be damn reliable. So that's my speech on the common problems that the S12 has. Now let's hop into the rare parts that you can find for this car. There's actually quite a lot of them, and they're actually kind of cool. Probably the number one rarest thing that you could ever get for this car is finding one of the 50 Grand Prix editions out there in the world. These are sold only in Europe, but by now, since they're so old, you can import them pretty much anywhere. And this came with a factory wide body kit. Unfortunately, it did not have the FJ20ET. It just had the FJ20E, but it was a super cool rally inspired car that you could buy off the showroom floor. The next rare part would be finding a hood with the turbo vents on it. You've also got Euro taillights that are pretty rare, and auto rain sensors. Now, auto rain sensors I've never heard of before in my life, but pretty much how it works is it judges the volume of rain off of the vibrations on the hood and speeds up your wipers to account for how much rain is coming down, which is a pretty cool thing that I've never heard of, and I don't even think it exists nowadays. Shout out to you, Nissan, for making something luxurious in a car that nobody wants. And of course, because we're looking at 80s cars, the digital dash is always going to be a rare part. And the super cool voice computer. Now, a lot of people say it's annoying, which I would probably agree after having the car for about a week. But during that first week, it'd be pretty cool to hear that lady say, closed door, open door, seatbelt, seatbelt. I mean, I always forget my seatbelt, so it'd probably be saying that a lot, and I'd probably rip the thing out of the car. But it would be cool for that 1 week. And last but not least, the last rarest part that I found that's pretty cool is louvers. Louvers are always cool on 80s cars, and because of that, I guess nobody wants to sell them or whatever, and so they're pretty rare. Now for the top 5 rarest colors you can get, so you can still say you have a rare car, but you can get it stateside. Number 1 is going to be black granite and platinum metallic two-tone. This was only made on the last year in '88. And it does look pretty cool. I mean, they are pretty basic colors, but when you add them together, it gives it a little bit of flair. And if you're looking for the, reverse panda, this is probably it for you. Next up is another two-tone, which is medium pewter and light pewter. There's literally only one picture of this on the internet, and they almost look like the same color. You'd really have to squint to see the difference in the colors. I mean, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. You can see it, but I mean, it's not too big of a change. It doesn't look too cool. Maybe if you add some pinstriping, it looks nice, but just these two colors are so close. And this was only made in '85. The third rarest color I have on this list is dark pewter. And again, really not exciting color. It just kind of looks like a black. For the fourth on this list, it kind of starts to get interesting, but it depends on the condition. This is called sunset bronze. I think with a nice fresh paint job, it looks stellar, but as soon as it starts getting faded, it looks like the whole car is rusting. Yeah, so if you can get one of these in good condition, I think it would be a super cool rare color to have. And they only made this in the first year the car came out, so '84. And the fifth rarest color on this list is called medium red. Yeah, I know, it looks like a normal red. Now you might be wondering, what are the common colors for these cars? And they're pretty much just the same colors as the rare ones, except a pinch different in shade, and so it's called a different color. You only could get medium red in '85, but through '86 and '88 they had hot red, and before that they had Regita red. So it's just different shades of red. So I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe down below if you're new. Join the Discord, we play games, talk about cars, all the good stuff. And if you have any suggestions for other buyer's guide or just other videos, leave that in the comments down below. This was actually done off of a suggestion, and I like doing these because it's what my viewers actually want to see. So see you guys next one. Peace out.